For USCFootball.com, I'm Keely Eure here with Dan Weber for instant analysis of USC's Tuesday practice of Fresno State week. Now, before we get into practice, let's start with the news of the day, Dan. We got word right before practice actually started that quarterback Jack Sears has put his name into the transfer portal. We got confirmation from Clay Helton after practice that indeed happened. Now, Sears was given the opportunity to be in the transfer portal, but also practice with USC and keep doing that, basically have his both feet in both places. But Clay said that Sears elected to work on his studies, be a graduate transfer, and have the opportunity to take visits. So he also wished Sears well, said he's part of the family always. But Dan, what do you take away from this news?
I mean, I thought Jack handled it as well as you could possibly handle it. His statement is just perfectly said in terms of, I'm going to work out on my own. I'm available if Coach Helton needs me. And this gets him started on, if he didn't enter the transfer portal, he can't talk to teams, he can't go make visits and all that. So this makes all the sense in the world. And he wasn't going to get team reps as a quarterback. They had, for three guys, they're going to get the reps. So I think it makes a lot of sense. He couldn't have said more nice things about USC and what it means to be a Trojan and get his degree here. And Clay absolutely couldn't have said any more nice things about Jack Sears in terms of what he meant not only to the Trojan family but to Clay's own family, and so it was one of those partings that kind of a bittersweet because such good feelings on both sides, and as Jack said, he did his best. He's proud of his effort, and I think if we follow up with Clay and Graham both talking about the quarterback decision in the competition, it was strictly 30 practices of who's the most consistent, who's the most productive. And I think the up and down nature probably, the feast or famine didn't help probably Jack's cause. I think they want to get a perfect play every play, even if it's only 3 or 4 yards. They don't want you to miss that pass. I mean, it's just I think there are places he can play and be very productive, and I think it wouldn't be surprising if he shows up at another Pac-12 school and you see him playing against USC next year. That would not be a shock.
Yeah, and Sears was always talented and productive. It was just that consistency that was not there and not at a comfort level that the coaches wanted to see from him.
Right, that's not his game. His game is, I don't see anybody, I take off, and I'm going to beat them on my own. I got enough feet, I got enough athleticism, and I'll just do that. And for a lot of people, if you're running certain kinds of offense, that's great. It just wasn't the fit for this offense.
As I mentioned, it's Fresno State week, which means it's game week. There actually will be a game to talk about on Saturday. But the interesting thing is that USC seemed to focus on themselves. Now, we've heard from them that this season is more about them than it is their opponent. And we have kind of seen that in just the interviews today on Tuesday. It's offensive and special teams day. Clay Helton normally gives a full rundown of the opponent they're facing each week. We didn't hear that from him. And then talking to other players as well, it seemed like they know this team. They've watched them. They've had film studies, scout team, all that stuff. But it seemed for the most part they felt focused on themselves this week.
Yeah, I mean, apparently the number one thing that they hear from Graham Harrell, for example, if you're on the offense, is running behind them and yelling, "Be us." He wants them to be themselves. Don't worry about anybody else. The little catchphrase he has is "Be us." Yeah. And that's the kind of thing. Graham, he's an interesting personality. Some of the guys are talking about they're going to carry his swagger on offense to the field. He said he's one of those Texas guys with a lot of swagger, and that's how, like Michael Pittman says, that's how we hope to be able to go out there and play with a little bit of that swagger that he brings. But he's all in, and it does seem like on offense, defense, everywhere now, they are very much into the simplified focus on themselves, so they can play fast and they can just let their athletes beat your athletes. I mean, Clay went into a little bit of a dissertation on throwing the ball to the running backs, and he said the idea there is they can all catch it. They're all good athletes, and the idea is to get them, isolated one-on-one and let them beat their guy. And just, find an open spot give them room to make a play and force the other team to defend them with one guy. And depend on the fact that you think your guy is better than their guy. Michael Pittman said the best thing about this offense is they can't double team him.
Yeah.
I get a chance to play one-on-one with people. I think that's the whole theory is we're going to play one-on-one, and we think we've got better athletes than you do. And we've got to execute properly, which is why simplifying things and allowing, for example, freshmen to be in the depth chart, like with the wide receivers like Munir McClain and Drake London, and getting them on the field. And on defense, getting a Drake, Jackson on the field. It all seems to kind of go together. I mean, It really seems like, okay, this is pretty well thought out. And it just seems like it brings everything together on all different parts of the game.
You mentioned Graham Harrell. We got to talk to him today. Now, after last week, it seemed like the pendulum swing kind of happened. Last week, all the questions were about the quarterbacks. It felt like this week, all the questions were about the offensive line and where Graham Harrell feels as far as his comfort level with them. And he said it all starts up front with any team. But a lot of the things we heard, you and I both got to talk to offensive linemen as well. The theme of the offensive line seems to be a new type of chemistry. They seem like they're closer together. Without necessarily saying it, it seems like they have a better opportunity to get closer with the personalities that they have in this group of offensive linemen. So it seemed like chemistry seems to be the key up front.
Yeah, a lot of barbecues. Brett Nealon said the culture change in his mind was they really want us to eat. And so we figured, what the heck? Let's have a barbecue for invite everybody on Mondays. And he took credit for being the grill master and said Andrew Voice would be the other grill master. But you just didn't hear stuff like that last year. Now, I'm not sure. I didn't ever get the sense that they were really encouraging them to, eat thick and all of that. So is that all going together? You never get a sense when you hear Graham talk about the offensive line and the run game, you never get a sense that he's worried about it. He really thinks it's going to come around. They're not going against the USC defense, which is geared to stop the run. I don't know that they know how people are going to defend them, but they almost have to loosen up, and how that's going to play. When you really, as much as people will have heard about all the wide receivers and JT Daniels and Graham Harrell's offense and all that, you think they've got to come in here trying to think about how can we stop the pass. And if they gear themselves to that, that's when you take advantage of what people are doing to try to stop the pass. So, again, we haven't seen that because that's not played out in this offense against this defense in fall camp and so far. But how it will play out against another team is another question. And, I think they know how they think that's going to go, but I don't know that. I think we just have to wait and see.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask you what you just answered, but I talked to Elijah Vera Tucker about Fresno State and what they show on film, and he said they show a lot of different defensive fronts and stunting, and that's something that we've seen in practice. USC's offensive line struggle with if you have a stunt, who's going to pick up that guy, et cetera, et cetera. But how do you see this team working with a front that might be confusing or challenging for this team?
See, I don't think the principles are going to be that difficult in terms of how you adjust, because basically, they can only rush 5 or so. I don't know that a lot of teams are going to rush any. I mean, you're really taking a chance. If you're bringing more than 5 guys against this offense, how are you going to cover all the receivers? So you ought to be able to get 5 guys hats on 5 defensive guys. You really should be able to. It's just more and more repetition, more and more playing together, more and more. Graham did talk about the camaraderie and how important that is, and that sort of confidence that you can play together. But I guess what Austin Jackson said, hey, we got a lot of work to do. I mean, we're absolutely not there yet. But I think in this offense, with a quarterback who can get the ball out in 2.5 seconds and a bunch of receivers that he can find, I think protecting him, I think they're going to be okay. I think they feel like they're going to be okay protecting the quarterback. I think it was Clay talked about that. One of the factors is, people were asking about, well, Jack, could escape, scramble, do all that. And Clay kind of said, I don't think we thought we needed that because we're going to have protection. This offensive line is good enough to protect, and the ball's going to come out quickly. So you don't get the sense if they think that's an issue.
Yeah. As far as injuries go, we got confirmation from Clay Helton that Solomon Tuialapupu will be out again for this year. He got a second surgery in that foot that has been bothering him basically before he got to USC. It was a steel plate in his foot. Clay described it essentially as an investment into his career and longevity as a football player. But that is another blow to Solomon and his health. He will have a 6th year, though, so that at least is more eligibility for him. And then, Dan, you got to talk to Vivai Malapei. He seems 100% after missing a couple weeks of camp.
Yeah, I think he's been running with the first group. I think he gives them a versatility, a physicality, just a sense of experience. I mean, when you look at it, thus far, as long as we got to see, you were going with guys who, Quincy Jonte, who's done a great job, but he's a walk-on. Keenan Kristen, basically his last sport he played was track, the fastest kid in California history that's also played football. But Marquise Stepp, still has his red shirt left from last year. And then Stephen Carr, not getting a lot of use, even though they say he's back. So, and he really hasn't had a lot of a lot of time on the field in the last 2 years. So you were basically playing with guys without much experience at all. The difference with Vi is he's been out there, he's done it, he's back. He said, I'm fine. I'm just getting a little feel for what it's going to take in terms of being at the right time at the right place with this offensive line. But I think if Vi weren't coming back and wasn't going to be ready to go, then you have a little more, I think, worry about this game. But knowing that Vi is going to be back, feels like he's absolutely 100%, I think that changes things. I think they feel that's another reason why I think they are not, any kind of panic mode about the run game.
Yeah, without a doubt. Now, I'm not going to ask you for your game prediction yet. That's for Wednesday. But any final thoughts before we wrap it up on Tuesday practice?
I just like the consistency that the message that we've been hearing and that we've been seeing carried over.
Yeah.
And it looks like that's what they're doing. They said simple and consistent, and they're being simple and consistent. And you hear it from everybody. And the focus is on them, not the other team. You're hearing that from everybody. I like it that they have a message that they all believe in, they understand. I think JT said it really well. Somebody said, what do you think about, this offense or something to that effect? And he said, I really like it. He said, but more importantly, all these guys really like it. Yeah. They really believe in it. He said, that's the important thing. It's not just me, but the rest of these guys. So I like that kind of message.
Yeah. Alrighty, that's going to wrap it up for the Tuesday practice of Fresno State week. For Dan Weber, I'm Keely Eure. For more, check out uscfootball.com.